Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on Caffeine TV. My name is Melissa Tosetti. Oh, Travis, thank you. Happy Valentine's Day. My name is Melissa Tosetti, and I'm the founder of The Savvy Life, and this is...
I'm Kevin Gibbons, the CEO of The Savvy Life. And I was supposed to come up with a clever title for cash flow expert extraordinaire, but I'm fresh out of options today, so I'm just a cash flow expert extraordinaire.
Just that's it. Maybe with an exclamation point. You can work on that next time. So what is The Savvy Life? If you're joining us for the very first time, living a savvy life is about creating a strong financial foundation while enjoying the journey. And doing that simply by being very purposeful with where you spend your time and where you spend your money. So it's about making conscious spending decisions on a regular basis, which is a very easy thing to do if you think about it, and yet it is something that we really struggle with. And we struggle with it because we're so busy. We struggle with it because we're out and about doing our thing, and we're thinking about getting the kids to soccer practice while we're swiping our card at the grocery store, and we walk outside, we have no idea how much money we just spent. Or the very, very, very many times in a given day that we can get distracted by other things that are presented to us, walking through a store and being inundated, or, just going online and having, different ads based on the way that, actually I'll have you jump in on this, because the way that advertising works now online, where if you have an interest in one thing and you click on it, no matter what website you go to, it seems like that item is chasing you.
Yeah, they stay with you. Before I address that, I want to add one other thing that certainly does affect our ability to spend purposefully and intentionally, and that's that in amongst all these distractions, there also is a possibility for conflict, either internal or external, where I don't want to deal with making these decisions because they're uncomfortable, so I avoid it. I avoid having conversations with other people that are involved in my personal finance sphere, like my family and things like that, again, because I want to avoid the conflict. And doing that can make it a lot harder to be conscious enough to be spending with purpose. So again, you put on those blinders, and then all those blinders, what they do is they all force you to go into reactionary spending, where you're just spending based upon the immediate stimulus you have and you're not thinking about it. And what the Savvy Life really tries to do is say, stop, think, and make sure that you're making conscious decisions. We really gear everything towards doing that internal and external contemplation to make sure that we're actually really making those decisions mindfully.
Correct, and with the idea and with the goal in mind of what do you want to be spending your money on, right? So it's I think that so often when it comes to personal finance, all the messages are so negative. They're all about not spending, and for us, it's the opposite. It's about just streamlining. It's about being very purposeful, and you do that by starting to decide, well, what do you want to spend your money on? And with that, actually, before we go dive into that perfect entry into one of the things that we want to talk about today, I do want to just let you folks know, if you are joining us for the very first time on Caffeine TV, or you're not familiar with the way that it works, so we are streaming to you live, and you can just continue to watch us if you've just logged on to the website that we posted out on social media just a little while ago. Or if you'd like to interact with us and type in questions, or just as Travis just typed in, you can see, wish us a happy Valentine's Day. Sorry, I'll get to that in just a second, Travis. You can see he typed in a question, and then we can respond to that question. You can do the very same thing, and the way that you do that is you just simply register on Caffeine TV. It'll show you right underneath where you can do that. Takes just a minute or so. Just make sure that you go to your spam folder and check for your confirmation email, because that's where I found mine. Yep. All right.
So Travis made a comment about getting rid of all your cars right before it starts raining like crazy. So is that a plan, or is that what you think is a maybe not a wise idea?
So you got rid of your car? It was an oopsie.
All right. Yeah, that is an interesting question. I had a similar situation where I had a car that my Saturn, I had 280,000 miles on it, and I really wanted to get 3 100,000 out of it. But it ended up having a leak in the windshield, and this was in December. And so I was thinking, can I just kind of muscle through? I didn't want to put any more money into it to get the leak fixed. Can I just kind of muscle through it through the winter and then drive it in the summer and get to that 300,000 miles, because I do a lot of driving, and then get a new car, or did I have to get rid of it sooner? And I bit the bullet and said, no, I don't want to have to deal with my car leaking water and rotting carpets and everything else. And so I got rid of the car and got it replaced. But that's a real issue, Travis. Is again being contemplative in your purchases and looking internally and externally. What are all the things that affect that? And a lot of people don't think about that. That if I'm going to do without a car for a while and use Uber, like Travis was indicating, is that something I really want to do in the middle of winter? Depending on where you live, that's, if you live in the northeast or the northwest, or if you're caught in the huge weather impacts that are happening right now, that's a big concern. 3 years ago in the middle of winter, it wouldn't have been a big deal, especially if you're in California.
There's no rain.
It's dry. It's 60 degrees. Put a slightly warmer coat on and call it good. Yeah. So yeah, that is something. Again, being mindful, being aware of all the factors that play into your decisions. Yeah.
It's interesting that it's something that we've actually been doing more of, is running the numbers on whether or not it's worth going ahead and letting go of cars based on Uber. And so far, everybody's held onto their car. It hasn't made sense for them yet. I'm sure at some point we'll run into somebody that it does make sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for those people who really don't use their cars very much. Yeah. I think that it makes sense, and for those people who use cars as an alternative to a decent public transportation system, where the public transportation isn't quite good, so I use the public transportation 70% of the time, and I use my car 30% of the time. In most of California, the public transportation systems aren't very good. Or an alternative motorcycle. Yeah. So you end up using your car more than places people would in other parts of the country. And in that case, Uber doesn't really pay off, because it's just, you have to use it so much. So I didn't know that you had a motorcycle, Travis, or because I do, and that is something that I'm definitely concerned about. When I was younger, riding in bad weather in the rain was, that was no problem for me. I just put on more gear and go do it. But contemplating that now just definitely causing me to have a little bit of pause. I'm a little bit more of a fair weather rider now. I don't really like riding in the rain.
Let's just clarify that that's based on older and wiser versus older and slowing down.
Maybe. But yeah.
All
so
right.
yeah. To my understanding, Uber, I think, is really valuable if you're using it, once or twice a month. And
it's personal preference. Yeah. So that being said, one of the things that we want to talk to you about today was the idea of basically everything that we do and everything that we stand for is this idea of spending toward the life that you want to live, rather than we have a tendency to spend around it. Any of you that have ever dieted before, that you may be able to appreciate this analogy. You may have made the decision that you want to lose weight, and so you're going to eat a certain way that's different than what you would normally eat. And about by day 3, you are craving a Western bacon cheeseburger from Carl's Jr. so badly that you could just shoot somebody for it. But you decide that you're not going to have that. You're going to hold firm because you're on day 3. But what you end up doing is you snack on this, and then you snack on that, and you snack on that, and snack on that, snack. And all of a sudden you realize that you ate the equivalent in calories of that Western bacon cheeseburger, and you should have just had the damn hamburger, and you would have been fine, right? So it's a bit of an analogy. The other way that we do, or we have a tendency to do, is if we have maybe a certain way that we want to live, but we go into a store and we have a tendency to get distracted and we buy around it. And what I've found in my own experience, and again with working with so many clients, is so often all those things that distract us, not only distract us from, we now no longer have that money that we spent on those items to do the thing that we really want to do, but it also distracts us because it creates clutter. We're burdened by the ownership of these things, and then we're complaining about that as well. So we're getting hit over the head by it twice, right? So my home doesn't look like I want it to look like because of all this stuff. Well, I also now don't have the money to do what I want to do because of all this stuff. But it happens again and again and again, and that is because of the diabolical marketing geniuses that are, the big guys, right? The ones that we typically call out, which are the Costco's, the Targets, the Amazon Primes, etc. So how do you manage that? You want to jump in on it, or you want me to go for it?
I think that the real key, as in just about everything that goes on in life, is having a plan.
Defining what you want it to look like.
Define what you want and do it in concrete terms. Yeah. We often talk in our webinars and in our one-on-one coaching that don't say, I want to take a trip next year, because next year is not a time. Next year is a continually moving hamster wheel time in the future. And next year, it's always next year. It's always, there's always tomorrow. So when you make your plan, you say, I want to take the trip on July 15th, 2020. I have a deadline, I'm saving for it, and on that date, I am getting on the plane come hell or high water. So it's the same thing with this type of ideas. You identify what you want to do, you make a specific plan, and you write it down. There are so many professional writers and professional life success coaches who emphasize the importance of the written word, and by writing it down, there really is something in your brain that makes this a commitment, makes it real. And so I think the first step is write it down, have a plan, and now you know what you're executing to. You know what you're doing, and you know what you're not doing, and when you choose not to do something, you have a reason why. You can now say, I'm not going to eat that cheeseburger because I have a plan for my diet, and the cheeseburger is not on my plan. This is on my plan. This chicken sandwich is on my plan, so I'm going to do this. So it really helps you stay focused.
Okay, so we have a question. How do you set a spending plan when you're traveling with a group of friends? Well, can we tell you about that? So we are blessed with, there's about 20 of us that
it's at least 20 of us now.
That are extraordinarily close friends. We vacation together, we travel together at a great degree, and everyone's got different money, different spending. Yeah. So there's some things I would love actually to get a little bit more definitive information about your specific question, but I'll give you some examples of what we do. We typically, when we all travel together, we will rent a big house together, and then we'll all end up splitting the cost of that. That's something that we do every single year. You guys actually do this more than I do, where you're using PayPal to transfer money back and forth to help you keep track of it. So is your question about that everybody makes different money and so you can't decide where to go together? You want to type that in when you get a chance?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's very, very challenging, and we have that experience as well, where everybody makes different levels of income.
Well, I'll give a perfect example. We have a trip with this group of 20 coming up, and we went through all the decision making and when we're going to go, where we're going to go, and in December, my wife and I had some unexpected vehicle repair bills that came up, and they were sizable. They were in the thousands of dollars, and so I sent a note to everybody saying, have fun on this trip. Sorry, guys, we have to bow out because we don't have the money for it.
Yeah.
And everybody was very understanding, and that's the way it goes. I actually really like this question because it feeds into another topic that we're talking about discussing, which is communication. Oh. And this is really key. As hard as it is, you have to have the conversation with your friends to what your capabilities are. Yeah. And you have to say, if we want to go do these things, here's what I can afford. If you guys want to go do these other things, I'm not going to begrudge you, and you can't begrudge them, but I can't go on that. I'm really bummed I'm going to miss this next trip. It's going to be a lot of fun. I really enjoy these, but I don't want to go in debt to do something that's supposed to be fun, and I use my emergency funds for something that had to be taken care of, and I'm just not comfortable spending the money for it. So you have to have that freedom and that ability to have that kind of communication with your friends to say, here's what I can afford. Can we find something we can do in this realm? And I don't want to be, I don't know if catty is the right word, but in our group of friends, we all understand that and we all work towards that. And we either, in rare cases, will cover for people if we really want them to come. We don't like doing that because that kind of causes some obligation and it makes people uncomfortable. But sometimes we'll do that so that everybody can enjoy it. Or we make adjustments. We just say, all right, well, we're still going to go do this trip because we really want to go do it. We understand you can't afford it this time. Let's do something else that everybody can afford it and be understanding on that.
And the other thing, by the way, we ended up not going last year because we decided that we took our son, we surprised our son with a big trip to Disneyland, and that's where we wanted to direct our money. So so again, it goes back to that communication. The other thing that is very helpful is defining and giving enough time in advance for those trips. It is when your friends it's when your friends say, hey, next month, let's all go to Vegas. And then you're starting to do the calculations and you realize, wow, this is going to be outside of what I'm comfortable spending because I want to do said thing. It's hard. And I understand, and this, I can't believe I'm saying this. The younger you are, the less experience you have in saying no to friends. I know it's hard. I know it's hard. I've been through that. But it gets easier, and that honesty that you can have with them is the best thing that you can do. That if they really are good friends, they're going to appreciate that you've got other plans. One thing that we did when my husband Paul and I got married almost 20 years ago, we decided that we were going to elope to the Bellagio in Las Vegas, and we were going to do it over Labor Day weekend. By the way, we got married Sunday, Labor Day weekend at the Bellagio, and it was a fraction of the cost as if we got married on a Saturday. So there's a little savvy tip for you. Oh, and it's Valentine's Day. But that being said, what we did was in January we sent emails, or we actually sent a written invitation, just letting folks know, hey, we're eloping. Here's where we're going. We'd love to have you join us if you can. And if you can't, we completely understand. But here's where we're staying. Here's what the estimated costs are. And you've got 9 months.
You've got 9 months to do for it.
Right?
That was great.
We eloped with 50 of our closest friends and family members. It was wonderful. But that's what it is. I think the biggest thing about that traveling with friends is really about giving enough time to plan. And then also just, Groupon getaways is one of the greatest places. We didn't end up going, but a smaller sect of our friends actually went to Iceland 2 years ago.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think there was about 10 of them. They went to Iceland, and it was like $600, I think,
really,
per person.
Really inexpensive.
Hotel, airfare, and stuff like that.
Yeah, excursions and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So to come back to your specific question, communication, I think, is the biggest thing. Managing expectations and giving as much time as possible for planning these things out. If you and your friends can get together and say, we want to go do something in September or October, that gives people time to figure out how to get the money set up there. And then the next question to ask is, what do we want out of this experience? Because that helps figure out what type of things you're going to do, where you're going to want to go. A really good example is, we haven't done it as a large group for a while, but our groups used to go to Disneyland and Disney World a lot. Mostly
way before kids.
Yeah.
Or my kid, we have the only one.
And one of the things that we discussed was, well, do you want to stay in the park at the Disneyland Hotel, or do you want to stay somewhere else that's usually quite a bit cheaper? And we asked everybody, what do you really want? What do you want your experience to be? And our experience is, we want to run around, we want to play on rides, we want to be goofy and work ourselves into a complete state of exhaustion, go back to the hotel, go to sleep, get up, and go do it again. So if that's what you want to do, there really is no reason to spend the extra money to stay in the resort hotel, because all you're going to be doing is sleeping there. You're going to be eating whatever you're going to be eating. So once we understood what the attraction was and what the interest was, then we knew how to price things accordingly. Now, when we did a trip, we went to Disney World.
That was awesome.
And in that case, we really wanted to enjoy the whole experience, and so we stayed in one of the resort hotels on site. It cost us more, but we clearly recognized that was part of the experience that we wanted, and we budgeted for it and planned for it accordingly. So getting with your friends and really being explicit, what do we want out of this experience, and then using that to guide how you guys are going to allocate your money. I think that's a big part of it. Kind of long-winded, but I think that's a big part of it.
Okay, I'm glad it's helpful. All your friends are engineers, so they're used to the finer stuff, finer things in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. I absolutely get it. And it's. I think it's just a matter for you is starting to just pick and choose of those trips which ones that you want to do. Yeah. And again, I know that can be very challenging, but there's nothing worse. There is nothing worse, and I say this from experience, than going on a trip knowing that it is going to either take you away from the ultimate things that you want to do, or worse, that you're going to have to throw on a credit card and figure out how to pay off later. No, it's just not. It's not relaxing.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Exactly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Don't go to Vegas every other time so that you can go on that big trip to, wherever.
It's kind of funny. My father had a very close group of friends that he hung out with. He would have morning breakfast with these guys at the local coffee shop before they all went to work every day for 35 years. And there was about 7 or 8 of them. He had a couple of other groups of friends that he met with and they did things together again for like 35 years. He had this group of like 5 to 15 friends that he was very close with. So I grew up with that thinking the norm, and I've been blessed with our current group of friends that we have that group. And as Melissa is very fond of saying, we can have fun in a paper bag. So we can have fun going to a primitive campsite and having fun. We can have fun going to a 5-star hotel and getting dressed up and having 7-course meals.
Which we've done.
We've done both. And so that helps a lot because, again, it gives you more options to say, if we camp on this part of the trip, we have all this extra money to go do something else. And everybody is open and willing to consider all those things. I kind of forget that that's not necessarily the norm, that we're kind of a special group of friends.
Pioneers.
Yeah. And but again, understanding what you want allows you to open up the parameters more, and so you can start saying, why do we need to have the finest things? Just because we're used to it, we want to do it. Are there other ways we can turn things around? Not
to beat the subject to death, but to talk about it more, because it is. It's a fantastic topic, and it's near and dear to our hearts. Yeah. If you feel comfortable, or maybe be willing to feel a little uncomfortable, but to have the conversation with your friends to introduce certain ideas. And so this idea of us getting together, it started out annually, us getting together to go rent a cabin and go play up in the snow, which is what we typically do. It stemmed from many, about 18, 19 years ago, me having a frustration around the amount of money that I was spending on gifts for my friends. At Christmas. Not that I don't love them, not that I didn't want to do something for them, but it was very stressful because there are so many of us. It was a lot of money going out the door. It was stressful trying to find something that was meaningful when, for everybody, again, a high volume of folks. So I approached everybody and asked, hey, instead of doing that, what do you guys think about this idea of us renting a cabin up in Tahoe, South Lake Tahoe or North Lake Tahoe, wherever we were? And it was North Lake Tahoe, because I don't want it to sound flippant that I don't actually remember that first year. I do remember that first year. And everybody was open to the idea of it, but we might not have done that, or at least made it ritualistic if I hadn't said it. Yeah. And every time I talk about that decision, I always say that in my life, those are some of the happiest memories I have ever experienced are on those trips. Powerful, and that is a huge part of where this idea of savvy living came from. Is that idea of streamlining, instead of spending all this money on gifts that are going to be knickknacks or clutter for my friends, burdening them with that, we have these wonderful experiences.
Yeah. And this kind of loops back into your whole idea of spending towards something.
Yes.
What is the goal? What kind of a life do you want to lead? And we're not talking about being a monk or an ascet where you don't have any fun. Farthest from it. We're just saying, think about how you're spending your money, and does this purchase fit into your plan? Does it move on forward? Spending plan versus budgeting. Yeah. We have a convert.
We're actually getting ready to write an article on that specific topic. I was supposed to write it this week, but instead I finished preparing my tax returns, and I'm very proud of that. So I'll get that article out in another week or so. I'm indeed a convert. Fantastic. One thing I do want to mention, or I don't want to say one thing I want to mention because I actually have a lot about this particular topic. When we are working with clients, we are talking about their life as a whole. So we talk a lot about certain short-term goals, certain long-term goals, right? So for the majority of folks we work with, it really is based on travel. But that's not the only thing to direct and to decide on. This idea of living a savvy life, you need to think through everything that you want to spend on, okay? And again, not from a negative perspective, like a budget perspective, which is why we don't use that term, but a spending perspective. So what I mean by that is, over time, I have defined the type of clothes that I want to wear. I know exactly what that looks like versus spending around it and having a closet full of clothes that don't end up getting worn. That's taken time. It's taken time and some professional help. But I've made that decision so I can spend directly to the look that I want to have. Okay, as you can see, it's pretty much black. I did. Hey, I had a stylist actually tell me that was my color, and I picked up my phone. I'm like, could you call my mom and tell her that, please? The other thing is, from a food perspective, what do you want to have in your kitchen, like ready to go, ready to be made into meals? What do you want your dining experiences to look like, rather than going to that same place again and again just because you're too tired to make a decision about food? So it's such an exciting and fun thing in that you are defining the life that you want to live, and then you're creating a spending plan to fund it. That's what living a savvy life is all about. So yeah, you're making a direct line towards those bigger goals, right? The fun stuff like the travel and everything, but you've got to define what everything else looks like for you as well. Sorry, routine isn't boring if it's applied to the right things. Oh, I like that.
Exactly.
Habit.
And that's one of the things that we emphasize. We have our savvy money habits. We teach a class on it. It's a big part of the book, and we preach it all the time. And it comes back to one of my favorite subjects, which is the more things that you can make routine and habit, the less is the reward.
We're not married, but
we'll
sure.
multitask. The more time, the more habits and routines I can get set up, the less time and mental energy I have to spend on it, and that frees my brain up to go think about other fun things, like what are my cool projects going to be? What am I going to do? What am I going to do for my next welding project? I don't need to worry about what I'm going to cook for dinner because I have my recipes set up. So it's kind of that same idea, is that if you have routines to take care of the routine things, you don't have to spend the brain power to improvise.
Yeah, can't help you on that.
Scott.
Can't help you on that. Sorry. Misunderstood the previous question. So what we are talking about, though, Scott, is we're talking about money. We're talking about how to spend toward the life that you want to live, and defining what that life looks like. One of the other things that we were promised on social media that we would talk about is on how, again, it's Valentine's Day, and not to be negative about this, but how do you communicate with your spouse or your significant other about money, especially when the two of you are diametrically
maybe diabolically.
Yes, it might be diabolically. Have come from different backgrounds around money, have different thought processes around money, or perhaps this is unfortunately the very, very common thing, in that one person is the person who is managing the money, paying the bills, Another one is the one who is buying the groceries, clothing the kids, right, buying the supplies for the family. But the person who's paying the bill is really tracking, and then the person who's doing the buying is not, or not even aware of how much money is available, and then there becomes friction, and the person who is tracking becomes the money police, and they become the bad guy. And I have extraordinarily strong feelings about this situation because it happens again and again and again with clients.
Like Scott says, my wife does all this. I take out the garbage. Yeah, that's funny, but it also, on one hand, it puts an undue burden on her because it isn't really fair for her to have to always come back and say, "Hey, what are you spending on this? We can't spend on this." Don't tell her that. No idea. Yeah.
Did you know you were going to get in trouble, did you, Scott?
So you hit the nail on the head there. It has to be a partnership. You really do have to set the time aside, talk about it, and make sure. There's nothing wrong with saying, "Look, I don't enjoy this. I'm not good at this. You are good at this. You enjoy this. You go ahead and do all the math." What you need to do is the two of you need to get together on a regular, non-confrontational basis, like once a week, like Sunday morning or something, wherever is convenient, and go through things and do a state of the household check. Okay.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It makes sense for one person to do the tracking or whatever that might be. I want to add one thing real quick. The reason that I get so frustrated by this idea of one person becoming the money police, right, the bad guy around money, that's even more not fair because that person is actually taking their time and their energy to try to do right by the family, to try to make sure that everything is going to be okay financially. And then when they're getting negative feedback from the family, that's awful.
Right here. You have to respect their. You have to respect their domain. You have to let them do it, and you have to commit to doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so here's the other aspect of this is that we deal in real situations with real people, and it's one thing for us to sit here and go, yeah, you guys need to get together on a regular basis and manage that stuff, right? And it never happens. That never happens. So there's a very definitive way of doing this, which is what Kevin mentioned, is to sit down on a weekly basis. Typically, we do suggest either Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings before anything else happens, and to, in a very relaxed environment, go ahead and go over what the spending looked like the previous week. So if you're using Mint.com or you need a budget or anything like that, you're looking at, okay, were we on track? Did we overspend in any area? Did we underspend? Do we have more money to spend in the coming week? Right? It's not always about getting in trouble. Yeah. But sitting there and doing that before the day starts to get away.
And I think that we talk about this, and I think that it is something that really is critical. You need to do this on a weekly basis. In my previous life, in my technical life, I was a program manager, and we had to give monthly status reports on our programs to management. And one of the things that we learned really quickly is that a lot of our programs were relatively short. They were 1 to maybe 3 months long. And if you have a 2-month long program and you wait 1 month to give a status report on it, if it's going to the toilet, you don't have a lot of recovery time. So it kind of goes along the same way. We need to check our personal finances, our family finances on a weekly basis, so you can identify issues and address them before they become catastrophic. You don't want a month to go by and then say, oh crap, we way overspent 2 weeks ago, now how are we going to pay our upcoming bill? You want to know, how does last week look? Ooh, last week we spent a little bit too much. All right, well, we've got 3 weeks to spend a little bit less to kind of massage that pain out so it's not too bad. If you get to a month and you're getting ready to pay the credit card bill and, oh crap, we overspent last month, well, I can't do anything, the bill's due today. So doing this on a weekly basis so you have time to react. The other thing is, hopefully, you can't get in too much trouble in a week, so the news won't be catastrophically bad. And so that becomes a lot easier to have the conversation. It's a lot easier to say, ooh, my bad, I spent $20 too much here, than it is to say, ooh, my bad, I spent $500 too much last month.
Holy cow!
Yeah, yeah. It makes it a lot easier to have these type of conversations. The one thing that I will say, and this is something that Scott was asking, can you do family counseling stuff? One thing we cannot do is we really can't fix this problem, which is both people have to be engaged. They have to want this to work. If one person is tuning out and putting their head in the sand, or not wanting to do this, trying to ignore things, you've got to figure out how to get around that. And you can try and do it yourself. You can go for professional counseling, but you've got to get both people on the page of saying, we want to address this. And otherwise it's going to be incredibly hard to make it work.
Yeah, it is. It's we work with a lot of couples, and we're not marriage counselors. We just have learned there's certain questions that we ask to try to get that communication going so that they can define what that plan wants to look like. I want to touch base real quick on a couple of other things, a couple of other guidelines when it comes to doing that reviewing together. And I love that and agree with you 100% that you've got to do it ideally on a weekly basis, because the other aspect of that is that when it's been a couple of weeks, it becomes overwhelming, and not only is it too late to maybe be able to make any adjustments to it, but you're going to start wanting to resist because you're going to have to review more, right? Double than you did before. And I'm saying this from my own personal confession.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
it's that willingness to procrastinate. I strongly suggest do not try to get together on a Wednesday night after long days at work and trying to get the kids to bed, and because you're both going to be tired and you're going to be stressed, and it's just all going to look like bad news. Whereas if you look at it on a Saturday morning, it's like, hey, we underspent by $300 in this particular category. You won't see you won't see those same positives when you're doing it in the evening late at night. So even if there's something obviously comes up, what's wrong? Sorry.
No. So what he's saying is that you only have these discussions on that Sunday and you put it back. No. If you have important news, you have to let your partner know what's going on.
Yeah, think about it as using a fire extinguisher in a one instance versus having to level the house.
Yeah. The way that I view it again is I really view this as a state of the family meeting. It's kind of like, okay, we're going to get together and check on the entire state of the finances and see how things look. That doesn't mean that you would ignore pressing, urgent needs. You have to address those as they occur. But those should be, in my opinion, fairly narrowly targeted to the situation. Whereas the weekly ones are we on track for meeting our goals? It's kind of a different viewpoint. So,
and also, by the way, it may sound absolutely ridiculous, this idea of having a family meeting, right? We absolutely get it. But here's the deal. In this day and age, the volume of categories that we spend in is our spending plans have just shy of 100 categories that people typically spend in over the course of a year. That's a lot to keep track of. It is basically our households are the equivalent of running small businesses, and small businesses have meetings to manage their finances. There's no difference. If you want to, I'm getting all passionate. If you want to live a certain way, if you want to do certain things, then be willing to do that planning, put in that time. What is going to happen is if you do it for the first couple of weeks, it's going to take some time. It's going to feel a little weird. It's going to take some energy, but pretty soon that becomes routine. I can say that very confidently because we have clients come back to us again and again and again to tell us that is the number one thing that made all the difference in the world when it came to them being able to manage their finances.
And so many of those clients started with one person doing all the work and then never talking about it, where you had a case of, in a lot of cases, especially in Northern California, it's not 100% true, but it is pretty generally true. The husband is out there working the high-paying, long-hour job. The wife is usually working I don't want to say a lesser job, but in some cases
you might get in a lot of trouble.
But lesser hour job. So what usually happens is the wife is the one who manages most of the home finances, and this actually has a lot of historical precedence going back hundreds of years. The wife manages the the family finances, and the husband just puts his money puts his paycheck in the account, and she takes care of everything. And this really isn't, and a lot of people start out that way. When they start having these meetings and start communicating this stuff, really understand what's going on, their lives just get so much more better because they're on the same page. They're lined up. They know what they're doing, and they're really truly working together.
Yeah.
So I think it's really critical that you do these type of family meetings. And I don't want to get into it in this meeting, but for a further one, this also is incredibly valuable for getting your children educated in how to manage money and manage their lives.
Oh, I feel very strongly
we don't
about
have
that one
time
as
to
well.
talk about it, but we'll put that down as a future topic.
By the way, Kevin and I are becoming ghost-like because we weren't anticipating the cloud cover and the rain to dissipate as it has, and so that's why you're getting there's sun actually coming through now, which we weren't anticipating, and get the proper cover. Giving the kids a healthy exposure is important. I absolutely agree.
And so,
thank you.
In fact, that's the large basis for our business. Is the reason we're in business is because so many kids didn't get this education from their family or from school. And my father was, my parents were guilty of it. My dad's whole philosophy was, you as a child do not need to worry about the money. I'm the parent. I will take care of everything. You have enough money. Don't worry about it. And while that's comforting, it doesn't really help you grow into being a really responsible, functional adult. So. Yeah,
and I would say even then, one of the reasons why we have our business is because money looks so different than when we were kids. I mean, when I first started out, I still didn't know anything about money, but when I first started out, I had rent, my car payment, car insurance, I needed gas and food.
And you had a checking account.
I had a checking account.
Maybe an ATM.
Didn't even have an ATM card at that point. Yeah. And so it was very streamlined. It was very easy. Now, again, as I always say, I can buy a cup of coffee with my phone. That's just crazy. Yeah, crazy. So there was something else that you wanted to talk about on your rage ride over here, your 2-hour rage ride over here.
I wanted to talk about procrastination and not procrastinating. So, and there's a lot of stuff in the news right now with the changes to the tax code, and people are incredibly nervous or angry or one way or the other. Don't want to get into that conversation. But what I do want to say is the tax codes did change. One of the changes that they made is if you fill out a standard W-4 form for withholdings, the amount of money that they withheld last year is substantially less than what they were withholding previously. And it's highly likely that even if your tax bill did go down, because they withheld so much less, you may have to pay more, or you may be getting a much smaller tax return. Whether this is not as good a news as you would like, or whether it's bad news, waiting is not going to help you. So
it could potentially be catastrophic.
It could be catastrophic. Get your taxes done now. That doesn't mean you have to turn them in and pay the bill now if you owe money. But get your taxes done now. It is February 14th, so that if you get your taxes done by the end of the month, you will have 45 days to figure out what to do by April 15th. And if you're going to get a return, file your taxes, get your return. Congratulations, go. Take half your money, invest it in long-term savings, take the other half and play with it. If you owe money, at least you have 45 days to figure out where that money is going to come from. If you put your head down and you say, I don't want to get bad news, I'm not going to process my taxes until April 13th, and you end up owing several $1,000s, you're going to be in a real jam. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to go, oh crap, I'm going to have to put this on my credit card, and now you're really in a bad place. So don't procrastinate. Do the things that are not going to get better with age. Waiting on this is not going to make it easier. Some things do get better with age. On the way over here, I was having this internal conversation. I had a boss who would come up with all kinds of crazy ideas and send people off on wild goose chases. And over a while, people learned, let him make his demands, and then don't do anything. And in a week or two, he'll get distracted by something shiny, and this will disappear. And so that saved us a lot of grief. It took us a while to learn that, and we were very careful to make sure that we understood what was real urgent and what was him running off and doing things that we could put off. So those things could be, we actually gained something by waiting, all right? People that you owe money to, that does not get better with age. And the other thing is that the larger the institution, the less likely they're going to forget about it, okay? I may forget that Melissa owes me $10 for a dinner last Tuesday. The IRS is not going to forget. No, you don't.
Okay.
The IRS is not going to forget that you owe them $200 from 6 years ago. They're a big organization that makes their business on going after these small debts and collecting and never forgetting.
Yeah.
So don't procrastinate. Get your taxes done. If you owe money, you don't have to pay until the 15th, but find out now so you can start planning for what you're going to do.
The other aspect of that is because taxes is not something that we enjoy. For most people, they don't know if they're going to owe or if they're going to get money back. So it's stressful. Yeah. But what ends up happening is we carry that stress all through spring, and so you're bogged down by it anyway. Just freaking get it done. And I'm saying that again. I always confess, I am a procrastinator by nature. It is something that I fight all the time. I get it, and it's funny that you wanted to have this conversation because I was thinking today about deadlines. It's the same idea. So you want to come at it from this idea of procrastination. So I want to come at it from deadlines. And the reason I say that is because this morning, I want to say it was about 8:10 this morning, I finished all of my tax prep for the Savvy Life, for my husband's martial arts school, and for our personal. So you can imagine that's a lot of QuickBooks. And doing right and doing due diligence, fact checking, and everything. Especially given what we do for a living, I take it very seriously. And so I actually owe my accountant all the credit because she is a genius. She's not a diabolical genius. She's a good genius in the sense that she offers her clients a 10% discount if they get their tax return information to her prior to the Friday before President's Day weekend. So for us, that 10% is significant given that she does 3 of our returns, but it's a hard deadline. And I have been getting up. I was a little worried that I'd be punch drunk today because I've been getting up an extra hour early this last couple of days in order to make sure that I had that time and the bandwidth to really focus. And I don't know that I would have done that next week. Yeah. I don't know that I would have done that. So we have to figure out how do we create our own deadlines and stick to them. She's created that deadline for me, so it's easy, right?
But she gave you an incentive, and I think that's a big point. Yeah. Is setting up to me, there are 2 things. One is setting up the incentives, and the other is figuring out how to do it in bite-sized chunks.
Agreed, and you can ask Kevin. So for the last, again, I was really good about tracking spending and everything, all through last year. I had a couple of hiccups with 2 different versions of QuickBooks, so I had maybe about 6 extra hours of just double checking and fact checking everything for myself. Again, it was a tech issue on my part. So QuickBooks is a fantastic product. But it's also my own paranoia, just wanting to do my due diligence on it. And I think that lack of sleep just actually caught up with me because where was I going with this?
You were talking about how small steps.
Oh yeah, small steps. So I just, for the last couple of weeks on the weekends and everything, just, an hour here, an hour there. It's pretty much how I do all of my work, is I do it in little bite-sized chunks and stuff like that. Because without that idea of it being, it just becomes overwhelming. So maybe that's the thing that you want to do is create the deadline that by, March 2nd, or let's just say March 4th, right? That's a Monday. You're going to have your taxes done, and you're going to do them in half-hour increments or hour increments. Set a timer on your phone or however you want to set the timer, and just get it done. And when you're done, you're done. Set aside, unless you're on a roll and you want to just go ahead and finish it. And I had a couple of experiences like that. This is stuff I actually really enjoy doing, so I get that that's not always the case. Well, maybe I don't enjoy doing it on a Saturday morning, but.
So expanding on this idea, just, went down, don't procrastinate. How do you go do that? So setting up the schedule is key, taking things into bite-sized chunks, and I think that the importance of the bite-sized chunks, you can do it 2 ways. You can do it the way that Melissa says, where you have a timer going, you say, at the end of the time I'm done with that. Or you can set up micro goals. Okay. On Monday, I'm going to gather all the paperwork together. On Tuesday, I'm going to get all my income figured out. On Wednesday, I'm going to determine if I actually need to itemize or if I can use the standard deduction. Whatever it is, set up specific goals. These are small tasks that I'm going to complete. Because then when you get done with them, you can pat yourself on the back and say, yes, I did this. And so, again, you can see that you're driving towards the gate. The last thing that you want to do is say, March 4th, I'm going to have my taxes done. And then don't do anything else. And then March 3rd rolls around, you're going, I guess I better get started. No, you have given yourself this time. Make use of that. Do it in small, bite-sized chunks, either by time or by task, however your brain works. And that's how you can go ahead and get these things done.
And I would add to that, know when you have the prime energy and brain power. So I'm a morning person. I have no problem getting up at 5:30 in the morning and doing that work. My typical wake up time is 6:30, but I could get up at 5:30 for a couple days. But I knew that I would take the hit later in the day. That's why I'm so surprised that I have been as articulate. I couldn't even get the word articulate out. So there you go. But I just know that that's when I can be very, very focused. So if you're a morning person and you think that on a Wednesday night you're gonna knock out a chunk of your taxes, it's not going to work. There is one book I was going to pull it for you guys to show you, and I'm looking at my bookcase right now. By next session, I'll pull it out, and it's basically about that idea of managing energy and like starting to understand when your peak times are that you can do things like that. Understanding when to take breaks, which is something that people that I am in partnership with need to learn how to do. I'm up and out of my desk every half hour or so, and Kevin can just like plug for 6 hours, and then his wife comes home and asks him if he's had breakfast, and it's like 5.
I can't focus.
And it works for him, but that wouldn't work for me. I've already had 5 meals that day because I eat like a hobbit. So yeah, that's all a part of it too, though. It really is. It's managing your energy as much as your time and your money.
And understanding the different types of energies. There's creative. Look easy. There's creative energy, and there's more rote repetitive task energies. Yeah. And you really, if you cross wire and you start doing the wrong task at the wrong time, it can really be a struggle. If you understand, that's not to say that you have to be in the right mood and have the right biorhythms to do stuff like that. I'm not going to go that far down the path, but I will say that if you can understand how your brain works and capitalize on that, you will increase your effectiveness. This is way off the topic of time, money, and spending smarter.
Actually, I disagree. I think it is because again, we're trying to. It's going back to not procrastinating and knowing when is the proper time to focus on certain tasks. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I'm fascinated by stuff like that, so I talk about it all day.
Okay. So that was the most thing. I wanted to go a little bit off on the procrastination, also just about the dangers of procrastinating. We talked about the risks of procrastinating with regard to the taxes. Also, the risks associated with procrastinating, with looking at your personal finances and where am I spending? Am I overspending? If you're overspending and you don't look at it, you're not going to get better at it. You're just going to keep going down the path you're going and probably going to get worse. So even if it's painful, take the time to look at where your money is going. You need to get your money going where it lines up with where you want your life to go. Otherwise, you're just turning the crank and plodding along, and that's no way to live. If you can take the time, even if it seems painful at first, figure out where you're going and line up your spending and earning habits with where you want to go, it makes your life so much better.
That goes back to what we talked about last time, which was financial destiny. I think it circles back beautifully because just so often we do the things we always do because we've always done them. We think the thoughts we've always thought because we've always thought them. And it's a matter of recognizing when some of us, we don't even know we're procrastinating. Yeah. So we're not even conscious of it because we're used to it.
It's a habit.
Yeah. So it's starting to listen and just become more conscious of things. And then and be willing to I'm second guessing the way that I want to say this. What I want to say is be willing to give yourself permission to do things differently.
Yeah.
It sounds weird.
Yeah.
It sounds very psychological, but again, we behave in a certain way, and we're so used to behaving in that certain way that it can be uncomfortable to start to try to be more responsible around your money. You almost feel like you're not being authentic to yourself because you've always been bad about money, right? And I remember just having this, not quite that consciousness about it, but it did seem foreign to me to do things when they were due, or to not procrastinate was a very foreign thing. And I still have those moments where we talk about future self and where I'll get ready to go do something, and then all of a sudden I realize, wow, I did that last week. And it's so foreign to me to have not, it was due today, but I did it last week.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
I'm ahead of the game. Well, it's so unusual.
It just happened. Actually, it just happened to me last week. And it was this relaxed kind of like, a bit of a, what do you get? Endorphin kick. Versus what I was used to having is that like, oh God, I got to take care of this thing. It was a different feeling. And so trust me, if I can change, you can.
I think that there's two things to look at that. You're absolutely right. You need to give yourself the permission to change, realizing that it's going to be uncomfortable. The other thing that it's hard to do personally, and it's really hard to do in a family or any type of group situation, is realizing that this is not about beating yourself or other people up. You're going to look at your spending, and if it isn't where you want it to be, don't beat yourself up about it. Figure out what you need to do to change it so it is where you want to be. In the family, if one member or both of you aren't spending the way that you want to spend the money, don't beat the other person up. Don't beat yourself up.
Nope. Yep.
Identify it, and as dispassionately as possible, and I know that's a stretch. Family, especially going on Valentine's Day, love is a passionate thing. So that's good and bad. Family and money are both very passionate subjects. I know it's difficult to be as dispassionate as possible, but you really need to, so that you can focus. Okay, this isn't where we want it to be. What is it going to take for us to get to where it wants to be, and how do we change that? And that's what you really need to focus on. And if you can do that, again, you're well on your path.
The way we talk to clients or help clients to do that is when we talk to them where they are now, that's just data.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just data.
Yeah,
so
no
now we have to
value
figure out.
judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Now we have to figure out, and we're not doing that like in a woo-woo, oh, it's going to be all okay. No, it's just because that's truly what it is. It's all about that was then, this is now. This is the information we need to get you where you need it to be. The minute that everybody starts, you either start beating yourself up or you start beating up the person that you're in a relationship with, that's when everything goes sour and you get stuck. Yeah, that's when you get stuck. So one thing I didn't want to do is I didn't want to spend Valentine's Day talking about how crappy it is to be in a relationship with somebody that spends differently than you. That's not the intention. We just wanted to share a tactic with you that we have seen work again and again and again and again. So with that, we need to start wrapping up. We're running out of time. We will let you know. One of the things that we've been doing is we've actually been recording these sessions and uploading them on YouTube. So if you have found some of this information interesting and want to actually go back and look at it, or just laugh with us,
or share it with your friends.
Share it with your friends. We'd actually be grateful for that. What do they say? Like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe.
We'll get those posted. We're actually going to put up a videos link on our homepage, thesavvylife.com, and these will all be available then. Our next session will be on Thursday, February 28th at noon Pacific time. One of the things we'll talk about, I think, is how to incorporate your family in family planning, your children as such in the family planning.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
I'd like to come back to that, so I want to say this now so that when I go back and edit this, I'll know what we're talking about.
Next. One thing that you said that triggered for me, which is, if you do like these sessions, please invite your friends to join us. This is something that we are trying to grow. We love this topic. Hopefully you can see how excited we are about it. Also, feel free to join us on our website, thesavvylife.com. We publish articles on a weekly basis there. Join us on social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, the socials. Instagram, not so much for me. And The other thing I was going to say, the list, yes. You can also subscribe to our weekly list. So every Monday we send out just a very short list of tasks, habits, and challenges to get you to start living a savvy life and to sustain it.
And there are also links to articles and other things that are good information.
Yeah, it's free. If you go to our website, thesavvylife.com, you can go on there and sign up for that. Yep. And I think that's it.
All right. Thank you all, and thanks for the participation. That really helps to make this an enjoyable thing instead of us just talking to a little bright light on the computer screen. So please stay engaged. We really appreciate it, and we will talk to you in 2 weeks.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.